walk in front of the Eucharist in an adoration chapel and it seems as though like nothing's really happening, right? It's just, it looks like a piece of bread and there's nothing really dynamic happening. It's all invisible. It's all silent, right? When you go under a big procedure, the doctor will put you under anesthesia. With anesthesia, you can't see what the doctor is doing, you can't feel it, and you're not aware of it, but when you wake up, the surgeon has done what he's needed to do. When we go to adoration, it seems and it can feel like nothing is really happening, but the surgeon is working on our hearts. He's teaching us to soften our hearts, maybe to forgive. Maybe he's teaching me patience when, I just want to be in control and I want things to go my way. When you go into the sun, when you're sunbathing, for example, let's say maybe it's a cloudy day and you think to yourself, oh, I didn't really get a tan today. Because you expose yourself outside to the sun, you're getting some type of change. The rays of the sun are hitting your face. You may not see it, may not feel it, you may not even realize it, but afterwards you go inside and you're like, oh my gosh, like I got sun. I didn't even feel the sun on me. I got color. It's the same thing with the Eucharist. When you're in front of the Eucharist, when you're with Jesus in that way, it's impossible for you to expose yourself to the rays of his love and not be touched and not be moved in some way, shape, or form.
The modern man, one of the struggles that we struggle with is we're constantly desiring and seeking entertainment and excitement and dopamine, all these things that can be really stimulating to the human soul. For example, we just watched a sad ending to the Lions season, right? Think of how much money was spent on Super Bowl this, playoffs that, and all these things. We build $100 billion stadiums for the glory and praise of entertainment, things that will never fulfill us, right? Even if the Lions would have won the Super Bowl, whatever, right? Then what about next year or the year after? Right? Only Christ can truly fulfill our heart's desires. Not just more dopamine, more notifications, more excitement, but rejecting all of that, turning our phones off for 10 minutes or an hour, and being with Christ and the Eucharist. We're not here to entertain you. We're here to bring you what God is truly wants to bring us. That sense of peace, that sense of calm. A heart speaks to heart to really fulfill our heart's desires of what do we want? We want God.
Whenever you do this, do it in memory of me. When we come and when we celebrate or when we adore Jesus Christ in the Eucharist, we are fulfilling his mandate. Do this in my remembrance. Do this in memory of me. And that's what the Eucharist is. It's the presence of Jesus. It is Jesus. And what Jesus does is he takes care of our human needs as well as our divine needs. He takes care of our hearts.
مار نرسي هو أحد آباء كنيسة المشرق، هو من القرن الخامس، يتكلم عن الأفخارستية فشي روعة. يقول أثناء القداس بالأفخارستية السماوات تنفتح، يعني أجواق الكاروبيم والسرافيم ينشدون يهللون. جبرائيل الملاك العظيم وميخائيل الملاك المجيد هذول ينحنون أمام هذا السر أو القربان الموجود بين إيدين الكاهن. هذه هي عظمة الأفخارستية بالنسبة لحياة المؤمن.
Like the reason that the Eucharist is the high point of our faith is because the Eucharist and the cross are related, right? And so when we want Calvary, when we want the benefits of the cross, of what Jesus did on that cross that gave us redemption, that saved us, it's found in the Eucharist. And so to really just like lean into the Eucharist and to lean into his body and blood that was given for us, and to allow that to purify our hearts, purify our souls, and just pour out over us. And so let him shed it out upon us through the Eucharist and just watch him change our lives.
Jesus wants to transform you, and there's no greater way to do it than in the Eucharist. This is what we gather for. This is what we're working towards, to make Christ available for the community to be transformed, to become brilliant.
Without God being Jesus in the Eucharist, being our source and summit, where we, like me, I'm a sister, I understand, I go to daily Mass, but like he has to strengthen me. And in that, like when I'm praying and going to Mass, I feel the Lord calling me to do things. And I think if we stay rooted in the sacraments, the Lord is always calling, and the church continues.
ولذلك عندما الإنسان كثير من الناس بأنه تأخذ وجبة أو وجبتين أو 3 وجبات في اليوم، أعتقد هي مدعوة أيضا كيما تعتني في جسدها، عليها أن تعتني بروحها، تجي إلى القداس وتأخذ وتؤمن بأن ما تستلم من قطعة خبز بسيطة هذه هي غذاء رائع كامل. للروح الذي يحتاجه كيما ينمو على شاكلة يسوع المسيح بالنعمة والقامة والحكمة.
Obviously, Mass is where we get the Eucharist from, right? And so it's primarily prioritizing Mass in our schedule, and it's prioritizing adoration time. Most of our churches all now have adoration chapels, and so we have a really beautiful ability, whether it's like 2 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon, like if we want to go stand in front of Jesus, we can, because adoration chapels are always open.
Anytime that you pray, you're connecting with Christ himself. And the highest form of prayer is the Eucharist. Now you take a Eucharistic understanding in our daily life. When a man says to a woman, I do, and when a woman says, I do to a man, they die to themselves and they become one. That's Eucharistic. And when they have children and they start to sacrifice for their children, what is that? That's a giving of their bodies and their souls and their hearts and their lives to their children. What is that? That's Eucharistic. When a priest is ordained and when he sets himself, his life dedicated to serving the people and giving of himself, what is that? That's Eucharistic. All of it is surrounded around a main word, sacrifice, which comes from 2 Latin words, which means to make holy. So when you sacrifice, then what you're doing is you're imitating Christ on the cross.
One specific example of a family who saw the need for the church and the glory of the church and say, how can I give back to Jesus Christ, especially in the Eucharist, is the David Jaju Kesta family, who for decades have been providing for the needs of the church in a very practical, very tangible way for the hosts, for the bread that we make, that we take the bread from the people of God and we bless it to God, and the priest consecrates it and becomes the Eucharist. As the church has grown exponentially over the past few decades, they have continued their commitment. And now his children in George and Fidel Casa, and like their children, and then even their children, you're talking to 4th generations who are committed to the tasks. But it's about $35,000 a year we spend on just bread to make the Eucharist, to give to the people of God. What a great gift that they give from their families, and I think it's a great blessing for them to recognize the massive importance of the Eucharist in a very tangible way to give for that mission, the mission of the church, which is to make Christ known to all, especially through the Eucharist.
We've put a mission statement, making Christ known, and also striving to bring Christ and make him available for everybody. It could be a new parish, it could also be a new chapel. This is why we have a retreat center. This is why we have a camp. This isn't just being able to just see God in nature and it's cute. It isn't about gaining or collecting money. It's about touching people's hearts and saying, we want to be part of this family. This family has changed our lives, and we see what it's doing for our kids and for the future, and how Christ has changed our lives, and we want to participate.
Without this annual dinner, of which we raise hundreds of thousands of dollars by the generosity of the people of God through really great efforts, right? The diocese as a chancery office, the bishop and his team, right? The work that's done for the advancement of new churches, of God willing a school system, of our 15 seminarians, of all the things that's taken care of, the retirement fund, the camp, the retreat center, all these wonderful things and great part of the mission. We would literally be in the red if it wasn't for this specific dinner, right? It helps us stay afloat.
If it's not for the Eucharist, then we wouldn't be having this dinner. Why are we having this dinner? Because we need church, we need Jesus, and we need Mass, and we need the Eucharist, and we need the priesthood, and the priesthood is for the people. So it all works together. We are all working as one body together.
I think that the next step really is to say, how can we continue to thrive? Not just survive, but to thrive in the church. Imagine where we have 3 new building churches and a school system east and west in the Chaldean church in the Michigan area and the Chicago area. Like, that would be incredibly beautiful. But we're talking big numbers here. That's why we have these dinners. That's why we promote these dinners. That's why we have an advancement development team. That's why we have a finance team, because it's not just 10,000, 20,000, which is very helpful. We're talking millions. And if one person buys in, and 10 people buy in, and 10,000 people buy in, and we all just do our little part, we will explode. And we will be so stable for generations to come.
We don't need givings out of pockets. If it doesn't come from the heart, it doesn't mean anything. When it comes from the heart, then it's blessed, then it's holy, then it's actually connected to the heart of Jesus. And that's the beauty of it, and that's what we serve. We're here to build Jesus. We're not here to build as somebody would say, build a portfolio, build a legacy of number of churches that we, physically built or anything like that. We're here to make Christ known.